where you have masked, uniformed soldiers who have even removed their names. And now, like in the recent case of the lawyer who was locked, thrown on the pickup, I saw the tape by Honorable Nambeshe. Yeah.
Judge, apologies for intervening. The lawyer's name is called Kakuru Tumsime.
Yeah, but in that case, I saw, yeah, but the point I want to say, Honorable Nambeshe, who led that delegation, he called the Inspector General of Police. And the Inspector General of Police is saying, talk to those guys and talk to those on the ground and let them follow the chain of command. So who is in charge? Is it the Inspector General of Police? Or the small or the junior officer who is stationed in front of Robert Chagulanyi's house? How can we have this kind of, it's like circus. If you are the Inspector General of Police and you have soldiers wearing police uniform, you should be able to know who is stationed in front of Chagulanyi. How can you now defer to, to citizens, to the officers to say follow the, the order, the chain of command, when they are telling you we want to go in this house and visit and check on our clients? So if the soldiers on the ground have removed their names, and we can't get them, we know the name of the Inspector General of Police. And we are the ones who know the law should now put pressure on the Inspector General of Police to account why we have a roadblock in front of Robert Chagulanyi's house, violating the rights of not only Robert Chagulanyi but all the owners in the area. How can you camp on the private property of a Ugandan citizen? How? Has a crime been committed in the ground, in the home of Robert Chagulanyi? Has a crime been committed there? These are things we are talking about. You can't have it. How can we claim we have a rule of the rule of law in Uganda when you can, armed soldiers can, or armed people in uniform, whether army or police, can just go and decide to create a military barracks in the home of a Ugandan citizen, even if he's the head of a political party. Even when we are doing investigations, you don't have those rights. And for how long do you cordon off if there's a crime, but there's no crime, but we have camped there because we are in leadership? These things must stop. For those who are in leadership, you are, it's a shame to all of us. Let's not continue shaming. If you have no shame, personally, Uganda has a name. Uganda has a name. Let's protect our name, because all of us, we can't just turn into Kenyans or Americans or whatever it is. There's a process if you are lucky. But as long as we haven't assumed the citizenship of another country, we are Ugandans. But we can't have this situation where there are laws on private property, and as lawyers, we need to find a creative way of going, putting pressure on some of these things to stop. If you contest in an election, that is a political contest. But you also have a right to home, which is protected, and your privacy is protected under Article, I think, 26 of the Constitution. Is it 26 or 27? I haven't checked. So let's stop this. Sorry?
It is 27, my lord.
27, yeah.
And 26 for property.
26, yeah. So this impunity must stop. And by the way, I'm saying all this as a peace-loving Ugandan, and we love peace. But peace which comes at the cost of violating the rights of Ugandans or some Ugandans is not peace. We all have a right to enjoy peace. You can't say for us we have peace, let those ones not have peace. Where are they going to go? That's why I said if you don't want them, cut off a part of Uganda so that the rest of us, the some of us who believe we can talk to others who don't agree with, maybe we'll live in Western Uganda, I mean Western or Eastern, I don't know. But let's just divide Uganda into two. The one where those who believe, lock up everybody, take over anybody's house, camp wherever you want to camp, kill whoever you want to kill. Let them live in one part of Uganda. But that's not the Uganda we were born into, and the Uganda we all, subscribe to, and the Uganda that we, is supposed to be as a country. And our leaders need to follow the law. That's, for me, those are my humble views. This session was scheduled to be a reflection on constitutionalism and the rule of law. And I've given my views, I've shared my views, and I would be happy. I asked the Attorney General, we haven't talked about him, but they were talking about lawyers. I think we need to engage. I know the Radical New Bar has had raised some of these issues with the Attorney General. But I too wrote a letter to the Attorney General, and it was an open letter. And I said, in case of my retirement, how could you have been the lawyer of the president? And in an election petition, which I presided over, and then having represented your client very well, because the president was the incumbent and was the president-elect, and you were his lawyer, and then you were rewarded with the position of Attorney General, so you became a member of the Judicial Service Commission, and you took over the investigations, participated fully, and then advised, the president. What happened to conflict of interest rules? Is that what the office of the Attorney General is supposed to do under our Constitution? And in my letter to him, I said, maybe you are right. Can we have a debate? I've never had a response from him. I know he was busy campaigning, but now maybe that the campaigns are over, I would be glad to have a debate with him, because I asked him, maybe you are right. Can we have a public debate so that you can tell the people of Uganda which provisions of the Constitution you are interpreting to advise the president, to advise the Judicial Service Commission that a judge who has attained 60 years of age cannot voluntarily retire from the Supreme Court or any other court. These are the things we need to take up. So I think President Semakade, you raised these issues, and you said, how does my case, how do Ugandans connect with my case? For me, I don't need sympathy. What I call upon the people of Uganda to see is, like, if this is happening to a Supreme Court justice who knows the law and who has articulated the law, I told the Attorney General in that letter, the letter is publicly available, that he's incompetent. I also wrote to the president and I said the Attorney General is incompetent, is endangering. Every day he remains in office, he's endangering our country, because if he can't give advice, proper advice on a matter as simple as a judge can retire after attaining 60 years, how are we sure that he's giving correct advice on much more complex and maybe much more complex issues than that? So we need to examine some of the things, and I know there are many fronts we need to tackle, but I would be happy to partner with the Ugandans, the bar, and the other Ugandans to tackle some of these people and say, why should you hold this office? and engage. Because otherwise, how can you proudly be up and say, I am the Attorney General of Uganda, but this constitution, this provision reads this, but for me, it reads this. You may say so, but tell us what is your basis. If there are cases, cite the cases that back up your interpretation. Otherwise, what are you doing in that office? Same for Justice Byabakama. The results are declared at, each polling station. When the Ugandans vote, the election, the results are declared at each polling station. Right? And I think if I need to look at this, I wanted to look at it before, but a copy is supposed to be left. Somebody can check it out. A copy of the results, declaration forms are supposed to be left at each polling station. But some of these polling stations were put in, I had some were put in roads, schools, open spaces. So where were those copies pinned? President Semakade, can you check that out?
My Lord, we shared with you our elections report.
Yes, yes.
We found non-compliance, substantial non-compliance in every polling station. We found non-compliance at the tally center, national tally center. None of the safeguards were complied with.
So how can those results be valid? And Justice Byabakama, I saw a video, because sometimes it says beware of fake videos, but this was a video where he was recording it, and it's available on Twitter, where I was saying, why are Ugandans complaining? What is wrong? How can you give Ugandans totals when you haven't shown them how you have arrived at those totals? We lawyers are known not to be good at math. So I don't know whether, now he became a professor of math, but lawyers are not, our specialty is not mathematics. But in any case, why don't you give us the opportunity to also add up, declare? Why did we have the polling stations in the first place? If we are not going to follow that, how can it be that when we are voting, we have polling stations, then at the tail end of the results, we have your totals? You know? End of. No, before he resigns. Before he resigns, he owes Ugandans an explanation, because he has been in this position. And he has gazetted the results where there are questions, and he's not answering the questions. And now I saw something where he has they are going around and they are threatening. Is it Uganda Communications Commission is issuing a communication to radios? Why don't you want Ugandans to voice their concerns about how this process was conducted? The same way you decided in this day of technology that elections should be conducted in darkness. What are you hiding, Justice Byabakama? Because if you have nothing to hide, we need to I know we have exceeded our time, but I just wanted to say this. These are things, I think the challenges that are facing our country will have to be, there are many, and we have to tackle them systematically, because different strategies are needed for different challenges. Now, in the case of Justice Byabakama, yes, resignation is one of them. But when the president was saying, is like he was a figurehead. Whether he was a figurehead or not, once you decide to hold, once you decide you accept to serve in an office and you remain in that office, you remain accountable. In 1980, since we had some genesis, I just want to say in the 1980s, when the elections that led to President Museveni and some of his colleagues going to start the Bush War, as it's usually called, we had elections, and I think the person who was in charge of those elections was Sekono, if I'm not mistaken. And the late Paulo Mwanga ordered that he shouldn't release those results. And I think Sekono had to, didn't declare and I think had to run to Exiled, I think, to protect himself. But, and then out of that, of course, the president decided to take the armed struggle route. So what I'm trying to say, this pretext, because I saw the same thing with the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, is like, I can't do anything because I'm being threatened. Yes, when you take over these offices, it comes with privilege and honor, but it also comes with the responsibility. And you should be able to discharge that responsibility. The moment you realize that you can't discharge that responsibility, bow out. Bow out. But this continuation of saying, oh, I'm here, but you see, I am powerless. When the constitution, is you're holding a constitutional office or a public office, and the powers, are vested in that office, who do we hold accountable? That kind of reasoning has led us into this situation where you have a holder who is saying, I'm here, but I'm not in charge. And then you have actors who are actually driving the show, but you can't reach them because they are not anywhere on the book. We know Justice Byabakama is the chairperson of the Uganda Electoral Commission, and he's answerable for all electoral matters. The moment he realized that he was not in charge, that's the moment he should have said, either to the powers that be, allow me to do my work the way I'm supposed to do it under the constitution, or I'm stepping down. That's what acting honorably means. You don't stay in office, take orders from left, right, and the center, where spokespersons of the Uganda People's Defense Forces are making statements on elections. The Chief of Defense Forces is also addressing the nation on how the elections will be held, when constitutionally you can't, attribute these matters to them. They're supposed to, their roles are cut out. The role of the Uganda Electoral Commission is cut out from the role of the Uganda People's Defense Forces, from the role of the police. And even when you are keeping law and order or keeping us safe, Uganda is not the only country where elections are held and where we have armies. Those roles can be properly handled. But if you are going to have the army stopping Ugandans going to attend rallies, and you call that security, that's not security. How can it be security? What if it is security? Have plain armed, members of the force pick out the law, the Ugandans who are not behaving according to the law. But you can't have a blanket, like this whole crowd of 1,000 people are all criminals. They are going to attend a criminal event, especially when those matters are on the calendar, national calendar of a nation. There's a rally, it has been announced, and the rally is supposed to be attended by people. So for me, the resignation is the end, but there's also the accountability part of it. That's why the issue of reforms for the next round of elections, is something on the table, but we have current issues and which we need to address as a nation, and we need to address them now in this, in this time. We have a period when we hold elections, and when the president swears in, this is the period which is supposed to help us, address those issues before we get into another term. Otherwise, the cycle, because what we have is a repeat of 2021, and I think this time it was even, even much more, enhanced. The interference, it was doubled or tripled. I'm not in the country, but from the reports I've seen, it's like we are now, I don't think we are on the right trajectory. So if we wait for now 2031, just know that we'll continue going down that route. Anyway, I think, Madam Moderator,